Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling. I shall we see what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today. I really hit that, well, really harsher. My bad. Well, that's what we have a vocal compressor on for, so there we go. Anyway, what are we gonna talk about today? I don't really know. I suppose we'll have to figure it out, but still. Excuse me. Had a good dream yesterday. But new Fawnhallow. Okay, so you'll see maybe next week. I'll talk about it in a second. But good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 7:57 p.m. on Monday, April 27, 2026. If you haven't seen Fawnhallow, I would definitely go maybe see the sketch or the concept of it. It's probably going to be the hardest Fawnhallow I think I've drawn. Like the most challenging. Like as I was drawing it, I was losing my mind, being like, I don't understand this perspective. And I will say, perspective is usually something I feel like I'm pretty good at a lot of the time. I'm not going to pretend I'm up there with like a professional artist, but as like a hobbyist artist, I feel like it's definitely one of my better points. Sure. Tell me. IND. Sure, nice. Why not? No, what I was gonna say was, oh yes, so the Fawnhallow concept, which I mentioned on stream, I didn't know, I was sort of going back and forth basically, but like I've been talking sort of vaguely about the fact I'm going on holiday, and it'll be for like 2 weeks or so, and it'll be for quite a bit, and I normally don't talk about my holiday destination until after I've gone, and maybe I will continue to do that most of the time. I don't really know, to be honest. It feels sort of strange to talk about because I'm not a public enough figure for it to matter. I know, but it's also like I feel like I'm also like, well, you know, security online and all that sort of things. It feels a bit weird to talk about something like that. You never know what someone could or might not do with that situation. But anyway, so I tend to be vague about it. Maybe now I'll be vague about it. You know, I feel like most of the things that I sort of go by is like, I'm not going to publicly put it out there. If someone is determined enough and they do find it, then I just hope you just respect the fact that you don't spread it or anything like that. So be it. It doesn't, like, it's not really that big a deal at the end. Well, like, for holiday. Like, there's other things which would be a big deal, and that would be, you know, pretty bad. So, or pretty upsetting, I should say. Anyway, I don't know why I'm going on this tangent. This is not the tangent I was talking about. The tangent that I was going on about is that the theme for the most recent live stream. Well, no, sorry, but the thing is, I'm going on holiday, and I was like, I'm only going to be able to stream on the first and last week of May, maybe, depending on, as long as I'm not too busy. And I don't think I should be, because I started my preparations for this holiday like way earlier. Not the holiday itself. Well, I mean, most of the holiday stuff is basically prepared, but that's not something I'm going to take credit for. That's something like a group of my friends have just done an absolutely amazing job for. I think I told her about it before, where it was just like, you know, I was like, oh, you need any help? And then, like, I'll do it. But then, like, I went to see, like, how much they've done, like, at some point through it. And I was like, whoa, they basically done, like, everything. And I was like, there's no way you need my help at this point. And that's true, they don't. So, yeah, I'm perfectly fine with it. In fact, I'm very thankful. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is, I'm only going to be able to stream on the first and the last of week of a month, maybe. And, that means we'd only have 2 weeks to do a stream, and I kind of like the stream. Like, I like drawing the streams, but I do think the streams are best when I'm playing a game, and then I get to also stream as like sort of cooldown at the end of a stream. I will say, I think I've been losing a plot with a stream Fawnhallow sometimes, where I've been doing some which are like way too complicated than what they need to be, because the entire scope of them is that they're meant to fit within 4 hours, I suppose, of drawing. I think most of the recent ones have not been that, apart from actually this month's one, April, which I actually did in 3 hours rather than 4 hours. But that's exactly why I started with May Fawnhallow in this stream, despite the fact it was in April. It's because I knew that I wasn't gonna be able to have a lot of time otherwise. So I was like, okay, let's stream now, and let's start it now, and then I'll be able to use that like as a starting off point, and then next week I'll do as much more as I can, and then the week after, when I come back from holiday, I will have 1 more week to do as much as I can as well. But yeah, a lot of recent Fawnhallows I felt like haven't always stuck so well to the 4 hours sort of period. I would say the April one I did pretty well, but that was like 3 hours if anything. The March one I think I did in 4 hours, but I also think I simplified the concept. Like I did a really simple background or something. Did I do it? There's no way I did it in 4 hours. I'm looking at it. It was 2 characters. February, I almost certainly did in 4 hours. I'd be surprised if I didn't do that in 4 hours, but I honestly can't remember. But some of them I remember. Like, I feel like this December one took me way longer than 4 hours as well. Like, the July one I did over 5 weeks, even, because that's how long it took. I remember that. And I felt like I was losing a plot. And I feel like this one I'm doing right now, the main one, is definitely going to be like a 5-6 week one, if I'm not careful. Because it's really, really difficult. But the general concept of it is it's like Japanese, like yokai themed. It's like Cherry Blossom was like the original prompt, which I think Nunword gave me. And because it's Cherry Blossom season, or it's the tail end of the Cherry Blossom season, I think, right now, in Japan. So I was just like, okay, yeah, let's do something inspired by that. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Although I was a bit hesitant at first because I was like, we've already done something quite floral 2 months ago. But I was like, we can take this in a different direction, to be honest. So yokai, I think, was suggested in one way or another. I can't remember. And I was like, that's a great idea. Or I don't know. So D is a kitsune in that, and then there's going to be it's sort of like we're doing like a spirit world sort of thing, you know, like how the torii gates, the shrines, the torii gates are like portals, quote unquote, doorways, I think, to other worlds. The spirit world, that's like the concept, that she is like a spirit in the spirit world. But then I came, or maybe I did, or maybe someone, like, it was from the chat as well, I can't remember, came up with a concept of basically like doing reflections, and I was like, oh, that's a great idea. It made me think of a very specific Idolmaster Starlight Stage, Cinderella Girl Starlight Stage card, SSR Yoshino Sinfest Noir. That makes no sense if you don't know, if you don't play the game. But she has a card like that where she's standing like on like a translucent body of water, and in the reflection you can see herself and also a load of like spirits. And I always love that card. Like, I don't care about too much about that character, but that card goes hard. I'm not gonna lie. So I was like, let's take that sort of concept and sort of do my own remix on it. Except for this time, Dee's not reflected in the water. She is the reflection in the water. There's a better way to put it. Like, in the real world, there is nothing. But in the reflected water, you will see Dee and you see all the spirits. And I was like, that's a really fun sort of framing idea for this thumbnail art. But the problem is, drawing a reflection as a thumbnail art is really, really confusing, as I found out. Mainly because I'm doing it at a slight angle, so it means all the perspectives are backwards compared to how you would expect. Because if you imagine it, imagine you see a scene and there's one thing which is far away, in this case a tree, and one thing closer, which in this case is D. They're like in front of each other, one in front of each other. If you look at it directly head on, it will just be like a flat 2D thing. But if you raise the camera up so you're looking down slightly at it, if you imagine horizontal lines at the bottommost point that you see of each of the things, so like the base of a tree, and if D's sitting down, like where her like where she's sitting down on, like her legs essentially, that horizontal line, if you're looking directly straight on, it will overlap with each other because that's how it works perspectively. And then if you're looking from slightly up, D's one will be lower down. And we have it, like, we can use this, like, look at this message board here, and then this Animal Crossing character right here. We can't go completely horizontal because there's a curvature in Animal Crossing, but imagine we did, and then my feet compared to the billboard's feet will be like in line with each other. But if we go slightly up, you can see that the bottom of my feet is going to be lower down in the screen compared to the bottom of a billboard screen, which makes perfect sense. That's reasonable. Like, if you think that's obvious, that makes sense. It should be obvious. It's something which you've internally conceptualized. So if you see an artistic rendition of, if you don't know what the depth is behind anything, and you see two things, even if they're sort of stood side by side like this, and they were drew in such a way that it looks like you're looking down on them, if the bottom of one of them was further ahead than the bottom of the other one, you would be like, this one's in front of that one. That's why 2D concepts, like the fact that it's Animal Crossing, if you're looking at it through YouTube's video right now, this is a 2D image you're looking at, but it has the illusion of depth through lots of nice sort of tricks of lighting, shading, and obviously perspective. But the thing is, in reflections, everything gets flipped upside down, which makes a very, very weird scenario where if something is further away, instead of the bottom line of it being higher than the others from a high angle, it's now lower. Which makes it look very, very unnatural. As I had an awful time drawing this thumbnail art, just for how difficult it was. Like, it was so difficult to conceptualize because it goes against every sort of base perspective principle that I have like ingrained in me. So like a horizontal line is crazy because it's like, oh, the tree looks like it's sunk into the ground behind D, and D looks like she's floating, and then I had something in the foreground which looks like somehow it's floating even higher than her. It doesn't make any sense, and your brain can't make sense of it. But that's exactly what I wanted, because I want my brain to look at it at first and be like, oh, it's a regular image, and then you look a bit closer and be like, wait, something's off about it, because it's meant to be like that. And then you realise it's actually a reflection. But I think if you want to imagine it, like eventually I got around to it, like the best way to think about it is imagine that instead of it being like from a high angle viewpoint of what you're looking down on, because that's what it is in reality, what it actually is a low angle viewpoint looking upwards as if she was sitting on glass instead of the ground being, you know, dirt or something, which is why it doesn't make any sense, because when you look at it, it's not a sight you see very often. Like, to see this perspective, you would have to be underground, essentially, looking up with x-ray vision, or you would have to be like looking up at someone who is on like a glass surface above you, which is a pretty uncommon thing, I would say. So it's not a perspective that you think about very often. Right, so it doesn't internalize. So I think your brain sort of plays a trick on you when you look at it. You're like, oh, this doesn't make sense. Like, what's going on with this perspective? But when I did that, then it sort of clicked into place in me. Then I was like, okay, now I understand how the perspective works on this, and it makes sense because, of course, from above ground, like looking into a water reflection, the perspective of a reflection would be as if you were underground, right? So imagine like you had like a flat mirror in front of you, and then you had a camera above it looking down at it. The camera's also reflected, I suppose, in the mirror. That is the theoretical perspective. If you imagine that theoretical reflector camera looking up at the real world, that would be the perspective of the puddle, of a reflection, of the real camera looking down into the reflection. But it is very, very weird drawing something where the perceptions are sort of messed up like that. I'd imagine that's kind of what drawing an optical illusion must feel like. You draw it enough and then you get to a point where it's like, oh, everything starts starting to mix together. I can't understand this. I can't comprehend this. What does this mean? So how MC Escher does it, I don't know, but fair enough. But I mean, that's kind of the beauty of art, is that you can do things like that, and it's something which doesn't have to abide by the rules and laws of reality, right? It's something which you can just kind of break it and it's totally fine. Yeah. It's a beauty of art. It's basically what I'm trying to say, is that you can break physics with it. You can do things like impossible perspectives which don't make sense, but you can render them in such a way that they look like they feel like should make sense, and then they just sort of mess with your mind as your mind goes like, what's going on? I don't know. So anyway, I was kind of, basically, long and short of it is I was kind of losing my mind over about perspective, because I kept trying to draw it as if I was looking at the perspective to begin with, and then I had to reevaluate and be like, oh, but in a mirror actually things are different. You wouldn't see things like that in a mirror. It's kind of like, it's kind of like that like sort of thought experiment that people say, which you might not immediately know the answer to. If I pose it to you right now, that's totally fair, but you can try it for yourself if you have a mirror. If you don't have a mirror, I guess you could use your phone camera on selfie mode and you could do it. But basically just take anything with a piece of text, or get a piece of paper and write text in. And then you can look at it yourself and you can make sure that you can read it normally. Why is it that when you hold it up to the mirror and you try and read the reflection, it's backwards, you know? That doesn't make any sense, does it? Because it's sort of thing like mirrors don't flip things. So why is the text flipped when you read it? And what I mean by when mirrors don't flip things is that if you look at a mirror and you hold up your right hand, from your perspective, the mirror's right hand gets held up, right? Does that make sense? Not from the mirror's perspective, because in the mirror's perspective it's their left hand, but the mirror's perspective, it's they're holding up their left hand and you're holding up your hand which is on the left. Maybe I should say the hand on the right. So if you have something to your right, it will also be to the right of a reflection, right? So if you had text written down the right way, it should be in the mirror, it should be the right way round as well, shouldn't it? That's basically the general question of why does a mirror flip text but nothing else? Is that what people pose? And I feel like you might listen to that and not understand what I'm talking about. That's totally fair. Because at least when I first heard the prompt, like the idea, I was like, that doesn't make sense because it's the mirror's left hand, not the mirror's right hand. but it's like you're not saying from a mirror's perspective, you're saying from your perspective. From your perspective, if you hold up your right hand, or if you put something on the right of you, the object in the mirror is to the right of your reflection from your perspective. So it preserves the side it's on from your perspective. So text that you write down, and if you hold it up to a mirror, should preserve the way it's written on the text as well. But the actual answer to that is it actually is reversed when you do it. And it's not because the mirror is reversing things, it's because you're reversing things in real life. Because if you imagine what most people write text down on is an opaque like piece of paper or any sort of writing surface. And then when you hold it up to yourself, it is the right way round. And it is the right way round and you can read it. And if you imagine instead of writing it on a piece of paper, you instead wrote it on a piece of glass and held it up to a mirror to see it, you would see it's not reflective in a mirror. You would be able to read it just like it is. Just like you're reading it off a piece of paper. Because the mirror doesn't flip things. It's only if you wrote it on an opaque piece of like paper, for example. And then what most people instinctively try and do is, well, obviously, if you hold it up to the mirror, it's still reflected the text the right way around of the mirror. You just can't see it. So you do something which is very natural, about we would all do, is like, I need to see the text. I'll turn the piece of paper around. Now you've flipped the text. And now showing to the mirror, quote, quote, the flip text, and the mirror obviously shows back to you the flip text, and that's why you can't read it. That's why mirrors flip text. They're not flipping the text. You in real life are flipping the text, and the mirror is just showing it to you. And I think it is more clear if you write it on a piece of glass, because then if you do the same motion, you turn it around, in the mirror, it's flipped. You can't read the text, and if you look down at your piece of glass, yeah, in real life, it's flipped as well. From your perspective, both ways, the text should look the same. And it does. It's just that on an opaque piece of paper, you don't really internalize that. You see the one in the mirror, which you can only see once it's flipped around, and you see your one, which you can only see if it's the right way around. And it's just a very subtle thing where it's just like, oh, you know, maybe you do think about that all the time, and maybe that was very obvious to you, but I feel like it's not generally obvious to people. And I think it's just like a little, not perspective shift, haha, which makes you sort of think and be like, oh, you know, how interesting, you know, because I think the thing I find most interesting about that is there's not some sort of clever scientific answer where it's like, oh, it's actually to do with like the angles of incidence or something, or the way that text actually isn't preserved because it's like a sort of one-to-one mapping onto it like that. It's literally the answer is as simple as the text isn't being flipped, you're flipping the text before you look at it. So TLDR, then Dear Darling has used this scientific brain teaser to build a core tenet of her life. Of like, you know, question things, I suppose. Is that what I mean? To sort of think about things from a different perspective, because sometimes that reveals more than you might expect. I guess that's what I mean. Anyway, on that note, I guess I'll round this episode off here. So, if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So, until next time, laughter. That's not right. Bye-bye for now.